Chapter 4 The Time with Josie. Company's coming, Josie said. I looked up from my pad. I was drawing a picture of a boat I had seen at Josie's canal, white with thin blue lines of trim, the name in script on back, Danbar J, and the captain hosing down the deck. I couldn't remember what he actually looked like, so I sketched in his back, bent over, a watch cap on his head. Who's coming? I asked, but Josie had pattered her way down the hall with Henry following her. It's Monday, right? She called back. It is, I said, squiggling the pencil for shadow. The movie's closed. My cousin Beatrice comes on Mondays. She smiled. I forgot. You don't know that. Remember? Beatrice had a lingering cold. Ah, I thought. A lingering cold, perfect for my next absence note. I looked around the kitchen. Not as much to eat in here. She came back into the kitchen, a thin line of red on her lips. Ah, but Beatrice brings dinner. Wait and see. It will be... She patted lips together. Delicious? She frowned. Yes, but... Ah, I said, trying to guess. Stew? Pasta? Hero sandwiches? She shook her head. Delicious. I finished my drawing and propped it up on the counter to see what I thought about it. And then I heard the back door, Beatrice bustling in, her arms laden with bags, and the smell... Chinese food, I told Josie. Of course, she said. That's what we always have. I put the plates out, the knives and forks, and Josie ladled the food into the bowls. Cashew chicken, mugu gai pan, bean curd. The smell is making my mouth water. Beatrice stood in back of me. I looked over my shoulder. She was leaning over, her head tilted, looking at my picture. Did you draw this? I nodded. She took off her glasses and chewed on one stem. Surprising, isn't it? She asked Josie. More than that, Josie said, beaming, moving Henry off her chair before she sat down. As I reached for a shrimp roll, Beatrice slid into the seat opposite me and spooned rice onto my plate, the picture still in her hand. Don't eat, she said. I raised my eyebrows. Not yet. Tread out some more of your pictures, please. I went into Josie's peach living room with the lilac couch. We had tacked up a few of the pictures I'd done. Henry and the pelican, the rock jetties, Josie's thin tree, figures in the back garden. I pulled out the tacks and brought the drawings into the kitchen. There was no room for them on the table, so I pulled up an extra chair and piled them on that. Now you can eat, Beatrice said, reaching for the top one. Thank you. I scooped up the chicken, piling as many cashews as I could on the spoon. She didn't eat, not until she had looked at all of them, holding each one up to the light. Josie kept nodding, reaching over with her fork to point at a line or a figure. And then Beatrice sat back. Imagine, I never saw anyone who was able to do this, she said. And I was an art teacher for 40 years. We taught that long, Josie said. 44 for you. Beatrice brushed at her hair. But I never did once. No, neither did I. Josie smiled at me, reaching across to touch my wrist with one hand. Beatrice took a forkful of food, eating absently, staring at me the whole time. We worked with all those kids who didn't have any concept of perspective, or even if they had had that, the composition was all wrong. If only you'd been in one of those classes, Hollis. She shook her head, then smiled at Josie. Never mind, she's here now. I couldn't swallow what was in my mouth. It was there in a lump, almost as large as the lump in my throat. Thank you, I managed to say. They were both looking at me, at the tears in my eyes. Spicy, that chicken, Beatrice said. I managed to nod, to chew, to a lasted swallow, thinking of the old man. Where'd you ever learn to do that? And Izzy, you have a gift, pure and simple. After dinner, Beatrice spread the pictures out on the table, reaching for my pad on the counter, one eyebrow raised to ask if she could have a piece of paper. With a twist of her pencil, she showed me how to deepen the shadows on that drawing of the sea. Do it on my drawing, I said. Never, she told me. It's your world. It belongs to you. She ran the pencil through her hair, separating the thick strands. Drawing is what you see of the world, truly see. Yes, maybe, I said, not sure what she meant. And sometimes what you see is so deep in your head you're not even sure what you're really seeing. But when it's down there on the paper and you look at it, really look, you'll see the way things are. I frowned. Look at a picture one way and you'll see one thing, I said. Look again and you might see something else. That's with the old man. I shook my head. A friend of mine said that once. Ah, yes, Beatrice said, sketching in an eye, bushy eyebrows, sharp lashes as she spoke. But that's the world, isn't it? You have to keep looking to find the truth. She ran one pinky finger over the eyebrow, the pencil smeared just enough to curve it upward, almost like a question mark. The other pinky softened the lashes. I watched her, fascinated. And something else, she said. You, the artist, can't hide from the world because you're putting yourself down there, too. I'm not hiding, I said, my eyes sliding away from her. She laughed. Good thing, because your soul's right there in front of you. She pointed to the sketch I'd drawn of Josie in her scarf. You see, it's what you think of her. She turned to Josie. Maybe I can take that trip now, leave you in Hollis's hands. She loves you already. I could see that Josie didn't know what Beatrice meant. A trip? To the southwest. Josie nodded then. Ah, yes, adobe houses, desert, flat rocks everywhere. I paint them all, Beatrice said. I looked from one to the other. Beatrice had picked up the pencil again, sketching herself, drawing a suitcase in her hand. And then she looked at me once more. You're going to be something, you in that language you speak on paper. She drew her other hand, waving. I love what you have to say, Hollis Woods. I sat there, hardly breathing. You have that, she said. It's more than most people ever have. Count yourself lucky. Fifth picture, the old man. I thought I was alone, sitting on the bottom step in front of the house, drawing the old man, working with a flesh peach pencil. Quick sketches, one after the other, hat down over his eyes in the first, standing in front of the river in the next, sleeping in the hammock in the third, his beard and the way he leaned forward, listening. I was trying to capture what he looked like, so I'd have to take it back with me, to remember. The screen door opened back of me with what was a soft swishing noise, and the old man came out to look over my shoulder. Oh, Hollis, he said. Where'd you learn to do that? I shook my head. Hollis? I looked toward the river, green today, a willow hanging over the edge. He put his hand on my shoulder. It's a gift, he said, to draw things the way they are. I sat very still. No one had ever said anything to me like that before. And something else, he said. You shine through in your drawings. I looked up at him, really looked at him, not a quick glance that darted away so he couldn't see my eyes. My name. I began as he folded himself down on the step next to me. Hollis Woods is a real place. I shrugged a little. Holliswood, I said. One word, I think. When the old man spoke, I jumped. It's where they found you, as a baby? An hour old, I said, in an I don't care voice. No blanket, on a corner, somewhere. Didn't a baby deserve a blanket? And just the scrap of paper. Call her Hollis Woods. One day I'd gone to see that place. I ran away from one of my houses. Tan, green, brick. I circled Queens, on the subway, off the subway, onto the Q2 bus and off the Q2 bus until I found the spot. It was winter bleak, but the houses were pretty. I never did find the woods, though. I tried to picture it in the spring when I had been born, with the birds chirping and the sun shining. Now I saw Stephen come into view in the rowboat. I play hooky, I told the old man. Everyone says I'm tough. They say I'm trouble. The old man made a sound in the back of his throat. Stephen's a great kid, I said. The old man looked surprised. I waited to hear if he'd say anything, but Stephen banged the rowboat hard into the rocks along the bank. The old man made another sound. Watch that, Stephen. The kingfisher's on the branch downstream, Stephen called. So we went down to the boat and climbed in to go have a look. Chapter 5, The Time with Josie. Over the river and through the woods, Josie sang one morning at breakfast. It was a late breakfast. We'd stayed up most of the night watching an old black and white movie. To grandmother's house, I asked, dropping a cornflake on the table in front of Henry's nose and jumping back as he raised one paw to warn me. Josie wiggled her hand, her head still bent. She was carving my tree figure from a piece of oak, stripping the bark until the underneath showed pale and smooth. The head was there, still unformed, the nose just a slight sharp mark. Josie saw me looking at it. A bit at a time, she said. The face last, when I'm sure I know you well enough. I didn't say anything. Instead, I ran one finger over Henry's back. His eyes were closed, he was purring, and I figured he didn't know it was me. Over the river, Josie began again, rocking in her chair with a pleased look on her face. Water, I thought. The ocean. We'd been there twice this week. Odd to see the ocean near the end of November. I had always thought of it as something to see in the summertime. I put the tea mugs in the sink, sprayed water over them, and waited, leaning against the counter, as Josie took a cut in the side of wood and gently blew the shavings away. She stood up then, ready to go, but instead she stopped to peer out the window. Someone's coming. I glanced out and saw a gray car circling into her driveway. The mustard woman had come up to check on me. My own fault, I told myself, hanging around here today instead of going to school. It was that lingering cold note. I hadn't been able to resist it. It's the wrong time, I sang to Josie. She smiled at me, singing too. And the wrong place? I had reached for a wool hat and scarf and the brown hat with a veil. Let's go down to the water instead of entertaining, I told her. We slipped out the back door, moving as quietly as we could. It was a game. We passed through Josie's tree-figure garden, went through the woods, and diagonally across the street. It was a long walk in the cold, and we hadn't stopped for jackets, so we were both shivering by the time we felt the difference in the air, smelled the sharp, Swedish smell of the ocean. We climbed up onto the pier. The fishing boats were gone this late in the morning. I knew some of them by now, and I could see two smaller ones somewhere out near the horizon. I kept thinking of that gray car and trying to decide what to do. I bent down and picked up a shell. Its edges were crushed, but it had a beautiful color, almost like the sea itself with the sun shining on it. What a piece of good luck, Josie said. I slipped it into the pocket of my jeans and nodded. We needed luck. Josie had moved away from me. I turned and saw her lying on the jetty, holding her hat with one hand and the loose end of her scarf floating in the water. She wiggled herself down and down until I thought she'd go over. Then at last she reached into the mass of foam that had settled around the stanchions in the pier. A moment later she was up, strands of seagrass clutched in her hand. Several inches long, curled along the edges that were the color of sand. Josie smiled at me and held them up to my hair. I thought so, she said. Almost an exact match. I nodded, realizing she had gathered them from my wood figure. It made me think of the drawing box the old man had given me. How often I had held up a pencil to match the color against something. Was the drawing box still at the house in Branches? I turned as I heard the sound of a car and tires bumping along the wooden planks of the pier in the back of me. The mustard woman. She came to a stop about 2 inches away from us and rolled down the window. Why aren't you in school? School, Josie asked, looking confused. I didn't answer. Of course I didn't. I had learned to keep my mouth shut long ago. In my mind, I pulled myself into a smart knot deep inside and tried to think about something else, anything else. Get in the car, the mustard woman said. I'll drive you there right now. One of the fishing boats had almost disappeared, and all that was left was the needle-thin mast on the top. Someday I'd like to be on that boat, I thought, to see what it would look like back on the land. I glanced at the railing that ran along the end of the pier. It was so low it would be hard for me to see from a ship. School, Josie said, of course. She put her hand on my shoulder. It was the hand holding the seagrass. I felt a soft scratch against my skin. Josie's legs were bare with dainty Spider-Man showing, and her silky shoes were soaked with snow and spray. I didn't want the mustard woman to see them. I opened the back door of the car and slid in, and we drove off, leaving Josie looking after us, her head tilted as she waved at me, the seagrass in her hand blowing in the wind. What's going on here? The mustard woman said. No school? I ran my tongue over my lips, trying to figure out the best lie I could. I told her today was a holiday, teacher's conference. The mustard woman shook her head. And she believed that? She said. We'll have to see about this. I reached into my pocket and held on to the shell. For the first time in my life, I thought, I'd really have to go to school. I'd have to, if I wanted to stay at Josie's. Chapter 6. The Time with Josie. My head was a round burl of wood, the seagrass, dried now, a swirl on top. Josie spent hours over it at the kitchen table, humming to herself, a tray of tiny knives spread out in front of her. It was Monday, early in December, almost dark in the late afternoon. No Chinese dinner tonight. I was making a dish Izzy had taught me. Special deluxe, she had said, and smiled at me. Chopped meat, ketchup, Worcestershire sauce, and cheese spooned over hot rolls. Salad, pound cake with confectioner's sugar sifted over the top. It was going to be a special deluxe evening. Beatrice was leaving the next morning for New Mexico, where she'd paint the adobe houses in the desert. I'll come back when the mood strikes, she had said, or when my money runs out. We'll close up the movie until I get back. All week I'd had a pain in my chest. I was waiting to see what the mustard woman would do. School was all right. I kept my head in the books, made A's on 2 tests, and had no friends. But if the mustard woman talked to Josie for more than 5 minutes, she'd know about Josie. Strange how much I wanted to stay. Maybe it was because Josie needed me. I'd never been needed before. Or wanted? Asked a voice in my head. The old man had wanted me, I told myself. So had Izzy. So had Stephen. Then why? Don't think about that. Think about Josie. A little forgetful, Beatrice had said. Maybe old age? But not always forgetful. There was the afternoon Josie had watched me sketch small pictures on my pad. I remember something. She tapped one red fingernail on her lower lip. There's a paper in the attic. I haven't seen it for years. I think it belonged to my father. I climbed the stairs, then, bent like a pretzel, I scurried around the low attic, stepping over bags and bushel baskets, stopping to look at boxes of paper-thin Christmas ornaments and yellowed leather gloves until I found what she'd told me about. Huge pieces of paper, gray and dog-eared. I ran my hands over them, thinking about the day the old man gave me the drawing box. As I had maneuvered my way back to the steps, Josie called up, "There's an easel, too!" Beatrice came now, hurrying up the walk. Her hair had been done up in a high pink swirl at the hairdresser. Her nails matched, and so did her huge pink purse. We were ready for her with the pound cake on Josie's best plate and the dishes on the table. We ate, watching the pale December sun drop behind the trees in the background. When Josie went inside for something, Beatrice leaned over. "Take care of her," she whispered. I thought of telling her about the mustard woman in the agency, but what if Josie came back? Beatrice saw me frown. Maybe I shouldn't go. Josie said you wanted to do this all your life. But go, I said, wishing I could go too. I'd take the short line bus up through New York State. It would be early summer again, the first time I'd seen Stephen and the old man playing checkers in the diner. I'd start over. I'd do everything different. Everything. But instead, I'd do it all right. I'd stay with Josie and I'll take care of her, I whispered. Somehow, I said in my head. Beatrice turned over one of my pictures. I'll leave my phone number, she said. I'll write it down. She patted my hand. I won't be there for the first 2 or 3 weeks. I'll be traveling around, but just in case. I watched her make careful, even numbers on the paper and turn it over as Josie came back into the kitchen, another one of my pictures in her hand. I didn't take any chances, though. Through the rest of dinner, I said the phone number over in my head. I wanted to be sure I'd remember it.